Hey, y'all. It's Juanita Coley, the founder of Solid Rock Consulting, where we help call centers implement technology, optimize the technology that they currently have in place, and build better workforce management teams. I want to welcome you to Call Center Chronicles. Call Center Chronicles is a place for CEOs, call center professionals, tech leaders, and yes, the customer, looking to have fun yet thought-provoking conversations around how we improve customer experiences and companies' bottom line. We are on a mission to normalize women in tech and workforce management leadership roles, and we believe that that starts with conversation. Welcome to Call Center Chronicles. Hey, guys. Welcome to Call Center Chronicles. Thank you so much for tuning in with me today. It is Tuesday and we are live on Call Center Chronicles. Super excited for this episode. You guys know I get super excited to come and talk to you guys every week. This week is no different. We have none other than Joel Richardson with us, VP Executive at Group Elite. So I'll be introducing him shortly. But I got to thinking from some of the last episodes that I had been doing, and I said, with talking to Joel about the new normal and all of the different things that are that's transpiring, the pandemic, and we're still, we're a year in, I believe, to this pandemic. How do we shape and how do we evolve as not only call center, the industry, but people and all of those good things. And so I got to thinking about the show, and I figured before we can really talk about our way forward, we really have to talk about how the call center industry came about. So I started doing research, okay? And I love this kind of stuff. So excuse my nerdiness, okay? But I'm on a mission here at Solid Rock Consulting to normalize women in technology and leadership roles. I'm a big person on workforce management. I absolutely love it. I love the workings of call centers. And so that's a big part of what we do, not only teaching on the technology, but also teaching on the discipline itself. And so again, I'm going to share, if you're here with us live, if you're listening back to just the audio, you can't see my screen, you should have been here live. But if you're listening to us live and you're hanging out with us here live, then you should be able to see my screen. And I begin to kind of think about where we started from. So I was talking to the girls last night and I was saying, hey, did you know, and we should know this, but we're not big history buffs, So did you know that Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone in 1876? And so that's really where this whole call center, if we talk about the history of call centers and where we came from, we really have to really talk and start with Alexander, right? Because we can't really talk about the scaling of call centers and the mass productions of call center without talking about Alexander Graham Bell, who is credited with inventing the telephone in 1876. Did you know that? So if you guys are with me here live, type in the chat and let me know if you knew that, if your history teacher did a good job of teaching you about, or if you were paying attention that day in school. We're not going to say the history teacher didn't do a good job. We're just going to say, were you paying attention in school? And did you know that? If I would have asked you, who invented the telephone? Alexander Graham Bell. Then, I started to dig a little bit more, and I was like, I found out there was a little bit of drama around Alexander Graham Bell and Alicia Gray, I believe it was. They were putting in a patent on the same day for the technology. And Alexander Graham Bell's people, attorneys, they pay the expedited fee to, I guess, have the paperwork expedited. And so that's why Alexander Graham Bell is credited with the invention of the telephone. So we really had two people that was trying to put this invention in at the same time. Alexander Graham Bell just was the one who made it in from my research. I'm not one to spread gossip, but it looks like Alexander Graham beat Alicia Gray. And so that's what I found out. I thought that was super, super cool. And then also that he is credited with being the founder of American Telephone and Telegraph Company, what we know as AT&T. I didn't know that either. Did you guys? Somebody type in the comments, let me know. Did y'all know that? Because I didn't know that. So when we first start talking about the history of call centers, I thought it was important to know that the main mechanism for call centers is a phone, right? So who's credited with that? And we know that that's Alexander Graham Bell. And then we start to kind of talk about the timeline. So we talk about the telephone being invented, and then we have this PBX technology that was invented around 1882, which is like this huge switchboard type of technology. And then in the 1900s, we have the advancement of that technology in switchboards that really allow for call centers to kind of operate on a more mass type of production, so to speak. And then around 1973, Rockwell was a company that created, is in history known as the company that produced like one of the first ACDs, which is just an advancement automated call distributor for automating and distributing calls in contact centers. And it was for Continental Airlines, which is an airline. So that was 1973. And then as the internet became mainstream, in the 1990s, call centers also grew in popularity and became more mainstream. And so I saw some pictures of some early switchboard operators in the 1990s, which you see here on my screen. And then we saw in 1965, look at these huge, like this is insane. Right? When we think about how the technology that we have now, from our phone systems, if we go into a call center, while they probably are still kind of lined up like this, unless you're in with this pandemic where a lot of people are virtual and work from home, we're not in the actual center anymore. So that's what we're actually be talking with Joel about is like with this pandemic and this new norm, how has this shifted? You can see how where we started and how the technology kind of advanced, and also how with the internet, the popularity and the growth of internet, how that really changed how we do call centers. So when the internet began to boom, so did call centers because we had access to more information. The technology for telephones were already created at that point. And then we had the ACDs that were being created at that point and becoming more mainstream. So we saw the contact center or call center grow. And so that's your history lesson for today, guys. Hope you enjoyed that. I enjoyed looking it up and finding all of the details out about Alexander Graham Bell and that whole patent situation. Again, I'm not one to gossip, but I thought that was pretty interesting. And I hope you guys enjoy that. So we are going to be talking again. I'm going to bring our guest on for today, Joel Richardson, and we're going to be talking about the new norm. So we've come a long way as it relates to call centers and the development of call centers. I'm interested in where we are now, the pandemic, the technology that we have. Where are we going? Where do you guys think that we're going with this, the contact center industry? So, Joel, thank you so much for joining us here today. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and what did you think about a history lesson?
Yeah. Let's go to the history lesson first. Basically, the moral of that story, from what I'm taking from you, Juanita, with the patents, right, where Alexander beat Ms. Gray, right? what I take from that is follow the money, and you'll figure out where where the solution is. Because it sounds like, according to your research, that Alexander, threw a couple Franklins underneath somebody's desk there, and because of that, his patent came through early. But so yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
I also found out I must have been the one falling asleep, even though the history teacher was talking. No, that's cool stuff about kind of the way telephones came about, and you think about it, right? That's 150 years ago, if you will, right? And we're still using a telephone, right? Now it's completely different technology, but the thought of a voice over voice transfer. Back 100 years ago when you and I were kids, right? We had the styrofoam cup with the thread, and we talked like this. You could hear me, and I could hear you, right? We were doing the Alexander Graham Bell telephone, and now, we don't need a thread, right? We do it all over, the airways, right? Yeah, isn't that
This
crazy?
little handy device, right?
Yeah.
And it's so funny because I was talking to the girls last night. So for those of you that don't know, I have 3 girls and children, and I was talking to them last night, and we were talking. I was like, "Oh yeah, you want the latest iPhone? Tell me who created the phone, huh? Can you tell me
There
who?"
you go. There you go. And,
So-
and they probably said Bill Gates, right?
yeah. So I'm so ashamed. I'm so ashamed. I'm so
Or
ashamed.
really, iPhone, Steve Jobs, right?
Yeah, so that's what my daughter said. She was like, "Yeah, it was Jobs. It was Steve
Some
Jobs." I
Jobs
was like,
guy.
he created the iPhone, okay, not the phone."
There you
So
go. There you go. That's
I
funny.
felt so ashamed. I felt so ashamed. Anywho, so yeah, I thought that was super interesting. I started to dig into some more details around that whole patent situation and found a lot more information out. But I was like,
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah,
it was
yeah.
some good stuff.
Yeah. Once you start talking about, hey, he slipped some Franklins underneath, you kind of wonder, okay, how else does that work, right? What other things are going that way? So,
Yeah,
did you?
it was some pretty good it was some pretty good research that I was very intrigued by. And the other thing that really stuck out to me, Joel, was how call centers begin to be mainstream the more the internet came into play, right? So while the internet wasn't created in 1990, it was created before that. The more people had access to the internet and it became more mainstream, so did the call center. So that got me to thinking about the technology and the things that we have like now, speech analytics, things that we didn't have before, where those pieces of technology is becoming more mainstream, how that will shift our call center, or how different things like pandemics shift how we do business in call center. Will it become more mainstream? Will work at home? Will we even have a center? Or will
Sure.
we will we now go into this model of people being work from home? And so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. So I thought it was really cool that the internet shifted that, kind of made it more mainstream.
Extreme. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Huh.
So let's hop right in. So Jill, tell me a little bit more about yourself. What do you do at Group Lead, and tell me more about your career, and then we'll hop right into your questions.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So, Juanita, when you're talking about how technology changes and changes our lifestyle, I was thinking back in the 1990s, when I worked for UPS, and I had the opportunity to kind of be a call center consultant way back then at UPS. I did, little did I know that, 30 years later, I'd be talking about call centers. But at that point, I remember sitting down with the call center manager and saying, hey, there's this new technology called an IVR, right? And what that does is it makes it so you don't have to answer all these calls. Your agents don't have to answer all the easy calls, but you can get them answered and by themselves, and you can actually route them to different areas so you don't have to have everybody knowing everything. And that call center manager was like, I don't know. Right, that I don't know if that'll work for us at UPS. We like to answer the phone, and I still think they do. But I just thought about that one as you were talking about that, how now, if you're a call center and you don't have an IVR, there's something wrong with you, right?
Right.
You're doing something wrong. So anyway, let's see. So yeah, I guess I started my call center career way back then. Didn't know it at that time. But currently, I'm senior vice president of services at Group Elite. Group Elite is a business partner of Verint, and so we do a lot of work with Verint. We're a self-sufficient full suite application distributor and reseller of Verint. And so what's that mean? That means we can sell, and my team goes in and does all the services for them, the project management, the what I call turning wrenches engineering, the consulting, the training, the support, the technical support, managed services, just everything from soup to nuts after that sell is done. And so I'm responsible for that, and have a fantastic team that does that very well. And one of these days, Juanita, I'm going to get you to join the team again. I don't know.
You know, we can, we're going to move right along,
Oh, good.
Joel was, so awesome. Guys, so awesome. So let's see. One of the questions that I had for you, Joel, was I keep hearing this thing of, I can't wait until we get back to normal. That's, if I had, we'll say $5. It's not going to say $1, but if I had $5 for every time I heard that, I'd probably, be a good thousandaire, hundredaire, something in there. And so every time I hear that, I know we're talking about the pandemic. I know when people say that they're typically talking about the pandemic, but I always transition. I don't know if it's because my love of the call center life, but I'm always thinking about call center. And so when I hear people say, I can't wait till we get back to normal, I wonder what that means for the call center. And then when I begin to do my research, that just drove that home even more, because I began to think about the internet and how when the internet hit, not that the internet was the pandemic or anything, right? But it was a new phase in how we, live life. Right. And so I think about the pandemic and how this is, we have the vaccine and we have all these, we have kids that are at home now and we have all these different options. Is this a new phase where, just like the internet, when we got the internet, we didn't go back to pre-internet, we just have gone forward. So what does that mean now for contact centers as far as the new normal? What does that mean? What do you think it means? And what have you been seeing?
Yeah, good thoughts on that. You said a couple key things that I want to latch on here a little bit. Is one is, when the internet came, we didn't go back afterwards or whatever that means, right? We kept on evolving, and I think that's kind of where I'd like to focus the discussion, right? And that is evolution of how we're doing in progression. I, like you, hear many times, is this the new norm? When are we going to go back to the, my normal life? And I've thought about that a lot. And I was listening to a podcast from Patrick Lencioni on leadership, and it was a segment on what he called the neutral state. Basically, when we get into a situation where we don't know if we should go left, right, front or back, and I think about, it was funny because when I was listening to it, I was in my wife's Mustang. It's a 5-speed, right, and he calls it the neutral state, and I thought it's so right. When you shift, right, you shift from first to second. You don't go first and then sit there in neutral, right? Because you're not going anywhere. You're coasting. And that's kind of what he was saying. You put in a second, and then you put in a third and fourth, and you go somewhere. Now, did I walk through that neutral state? Absolutely, I did. But did I stay in that neutral state? No, and I think that's a challenge that some of us may be having when we say, I can't wait to get back to the new norm or the norm, because we're sitting there in a neutral state and not evolving, not progressing. It's and you know, I've got a lot of thoughts on this. You know, the other thought on it is exactly what you said, Juanita, and that is, you know, with the internet, did we go backwards? No. And think about in 1978 when we're all driving that beautiful new Ford Pinto, right? And can you imagine if we still had to drive that Ford Pinto
Oh my
today
God.
because it's normal, right? And I want normal. No, we don't want normal, right? We want evolution. We
Mm.
want to progress and innovate and find ways to do that. And so, you know, what is that going to look like? Well, you know, you and I can pontificate all day long on that, but I think I think at the end of the day, instead of asking ourselves, when can I go back? And that's a key point that you made. When can I go back to the normal? I'm not sure that's healthy for us, right? I think we need to figure out what is this going to drive us so that we can become better, faster, stronger, right? Nobody wants to drive a Ford Pinto today, right? We want the Mustang, we want the Maserati. So it's that type of innovation that this pandemic, I believe, has brought. It has brought some great things that we can talk about later.
Man, that's so. You got gems. You got gems, Joel. You got the gem drop. Okay, so that's our thing here at Call Center Chronicles. We drop these gems when our guests say something that's just like, psh, you know, we should do the little mind blow emoji. Yeah, we should do that. So I'm talking to the production team, guys. we
Get
should do
on
the
that.
mind. We should do the mind blown emoji. But no, what you said about being a neutral state, and we're so quick to say, when do we go back? You know, it's like we don't want to go back.
Yeah.
We don't want to go back to the horses. And what I was thinking about as you were saying that was one of my favorite quotes is by Henry Ford. He said, if I would have asked them what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. You know,
Right.
it's
Right.
like, no, I don't want a faster horse. Put the horse on the actual emblem, but give me actually something that's automated, that can go faster, quicker, get me there quicker, safer, you know, all of those different things. And so I think what has happened is the pandemic has basically embodied the Henry Ford slogan. Like, if I would have asked you if you wanted to send people work at home, you would have kept going back and forth with me on, no, how we can't do that, and we don't have the technology, it's not compliant. But because the pandemic has happened, I've had to figure out, how do I work from home? How do I stay in compliance? And so the pandemic, when I think about what you're saying about kind of shifting and shifting those gears, it puts me in that mindset of Henry Ford, of how, you know, if the pandemic would have asked us if what we would have wanted, would we have said we wanted a pandemic, we wanted people to die? Absolutely not, right? We wouldn't have said that.
Right.
But through the pandemic and this new normal, we have found ways to evolve, which is what you're saying, right? We found ways to evolve. We found ways to innovate and become better, stronger, quicker, and more proficient and efficient as a industry. And I'm talking about the call center industry, and hopefully as people as well, but specifically as a industry that services customers, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's you know, necessity is the mother of invention, right? I wish I would have coined that phrase, right? But it's so true, and it's so true in our personal lives. When something a little bit challenging happens in our personal lives, we have to solve it, right? We have to find a way around that. When something happens to an industry like the call center industry, we've got to find a way to solve that problem. And guess what? We're smart, and we can solve that. And I love what you said about, you know, 18 months ago, 2 years ago, we had agents at home, right? They were working at home. It wasn't the majority, but it was some. And every time we'd meet with call center management and say, hey, there's this thing called the cloud, and we can move it there, and people can go home. They'd go, yeah, I'm not sure I want my people working from home. But as you said, because of this occurrence, now it forced the issue. And we had to quickly figure out and pivot and figure out how are we going to make that happen. And I think as an industry, I think we did pretty well.
Talking on mute. Yeah, that's so good. So tell me, how important do you think, and we've kind of alluded to this already, but I'm so interested to hear your perspective on it. Because again, the pandemic and this new norm, we've been talking about it. I think people have just been talking about it as it makes sense, right? From just a people standpoint. And I just always associate it with call centers. How important do you think it is for call centers to continue to adapt to the new norm?
Yeah, great question. So, couple thoughts come to mind. Number one is there was a study done recently by Forrester that he says that they say in this year actually that the call center, the customer service branch of a company, is going to be a lifeline to consumers. And dig in a little bit further in that, and it talks about how now they did a study now, and basically the consumer wants a more empathetic experience versus quick resolution. Now, Juanita, we both know that is a total switch, right? If that same survey 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it would have been, lopsided to say, I just want to get my item resolved, right? Get my bill resolved, get my Dish Network resolved, whatever it is. I just want it resolved. You need to be nice to me. You need to be civil to me, but get it done. Well, this research shows that it's all about being empathetic. Why is that? Well, I think there's a couple reasons. One is, as human beings, we're a social animal, right? And when you lock us in four walls all day, even true blue introverts like me, right? Sometimes we go, hey, I need to talk to somebody. I need to see somebody's face, right? And so I believe that's what Forrester is getting at, is that we as human beings want that connection. We want that human connection. And so that AHT is going to go up a little bit because, hey, I'm sitting here all alone, and guess what? I might ask you how the weather is in Milwaukee, where you're at, versus is my bill resolved now, and now I got to go. So how important is it that call centers adjust and evolve? Way important. I mean, we can talk about Netflix and Blockbuster, right? Blockbuster said, no, it'll never go that way. There'll never be something called streaming. Guess what, right? And now they're history. And it's going to be the same way with our call centers, that they need to understand for now, they need to be a lot more empathetic with those customers to give them that experience that they're looking for. Now, I don't know, in a year or two, when this pandemic has kind of come down a little bit, I'm guessing that survey is going to go 180 degrees again. But that's the beauty of evolving and making sure that the customer's experience is what you want it to be and what they want it to be. That more importantly, so they need to evolve. They do that with technology. They do that with coaching. They do that with making sure that their agents are being treated well. That schedules are good and all that WFM stuff, Juanita, that you know much better than I do. But that's what's going to help them evolve. That's what's going to help them keep and retain those customers. Otherwise, they're going to be the next Sears. They're going to be the next Blockbuster Video.
Man, that's so good. That's so good that you said that, because it reminds me of a book that I recently finished, and I was talking about it on the last episode, but it was The E-Myth Enterprise by Michael E. Gerber. Have you read that book, Joel?
Never.
Okay. Okay, Joel, I see you. Okay. So I get excited. Okay. So I'm on the right path. Okay. Why you didn't tell me about the book, Joel? Why you didn't tell me about the book?
I got another book for you too. Then this one's that one's another good one by Jim Camp. Start with no. Right.
Okay.
You gotta get that one.
All right. All right. I'll let you off the hook since you gave me the second
All
one.
right.
Okay.
All right.
But so I was reading E-Myth Enterprise by Michael Gerber. I was reading the Enterprise version. I got to get that one. That's called Mastery, right? It looks like that
Mastery.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he talks about the stakeholders and how you have your, your employee, you have your customer, you have your supplier, and you have, the investor. And so what I was just basically hearing you say is we have to evolve on all fronts. Right. So we have to think about the agent, and do we have the right kinds of shifts, and do we have the right type of time off policies and all of those different things so that we can have a happy agent that's going to translate and be more empathetic. Right. And take time to think about all of those different things that in turn turns into a customer experience. We have to think about the customer that's dealing with the pandemic that has been shut in, so to speak, for months on end, and they are calling and they want more one-on-one time. They want to talk more. They want to do more of those different things. And so we will see in turn AHT, average handle time, for those of you that aren't call center buffs, right? Average handle time begin to tweak up, right? Because we're in a pandemic, because people are shut in, they want to talk more. And again, as opposed to post-pandemic or pre-pandemic, right? Where everybody's on the go and I got a million and one things to do. I'm trying to chat you. If I call in, it's a problem, right? So,
Right.
It's so many different experiences. And as we think about the different suppliers, we think about the investors, we think about the agent, we think about the customer, where are we at this particular time with each of those individuals, right, that are stakeholders to our business, and what is the environment that we're in that now shapes how we do business, how we evolve, and how we innovate. And unless we're thinking about those four components, then we're not truly evolving and innovating, because we can't just think about customer experience. We hear that all the time. Customer experience, customer experience. Well, we're only thinking about one aspect, and that's kind of the end result without thinking about all the inputs. We have a saying in forecasting, you guys will probably hear me say this all the time on the show, trash in equals trash out, right? So if it doesn't matter if I have a Maserati of a tool, right? If I have a Varen, the Aspect or whatever, nice, doesn't matter what I have. If I feed it bad information, it's going to spit out bad information. And so in order to think about the customer experience completely and holistically, I have to think about the whole thing, right? Like what type of agents are talking to these customers? Do they have the right shifts? Have they been coached to now think about the pandemic and how to be more empathetic based on the Forrester's report versus thinking about their AHT and how they're going to get dinged if they don't get off the phone quick enough, so all of those different things. And I think as we begin to think about those four pieces, that's what's really going to make up how we evolve and how we adopt this new normal as a call center.
Yeah, I think you said some interesting things there. Gerber, the E-Myth, right, where he talks about the whole ecosystem, right, and we become pretty good at the supply chain, kind of the physical ecosystem of a supply chain now. Look at 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we didn't even have the word supply chain. We now understand how important that getting those physical goods from point A to point B and the logistics involved in that is so important to give that customer experience where they can pick up that toilet tissue, right? In the pandemic, they can pick it up off the shelf. I foresee a time when call centers are going to do the same thing, and vendors are going to be held a lot more accountable to the customer experience. So today, to be fair, today, the customer experience vendor will walk in there, put the application in, consult, train, and then really we kind of step back and go to somebody else. I foresee a time when that ecosystem of supply chain, from vendor to investors to finally that agent, and then finally the customer themselves, that we will all be much more accountable to making sure that happens. Now, how's that going to work, Juanita? I don't know, but we've seen it in the physical world, right, of logistics and inventory. I think it's going to come in the digital world and that customer experience where the vendor, the investor, the agent, the supplier, everybody is going to be a lot more ingrained, incented, and accountable to ensure that at the end of that supply chain, that there's actually a customer experience that everybody wanted for that customer.
Oh man, I wish I had the bomb emojis right now. Like, that is so good. I can't even explain. I'm going to try. Because I can't even explain how good that is, because it's the whole reason Solid Rock exists, right? Is because I come from a user background where I was using the solutions, working in companies like United Healthcare, Liberty Medical, Walgreens, so forth and so on, using the variants, the IEXs, and all of those different things, building the workforce teams, and love workforce management, love the call center operations experience. But then I moved over to the technology side because I wanted to understand, well, how is all this powered? Right. And so I understood from a user perspective how to use the tool and what it gave me as an output as a result. And then I moved over to the technology side to find out more of, okay, how is the system created and how it is, creating this versus that, give me, the end user, a result. And so I saw, as I moved over to the technology side, a big gap between how we train the solution without training the discipline. And so people know which buttons to press, but they don't understand the call center discipline. They don't understand quality programs and how to develop a quality program. They don't understand the workforce management and the inputs that go into workforce. It's not the solution. It's the discipline and what you're saying, that end result of getting the customer information adequately, effectively, efficiently, to where they feel like they've been taken care of. And until you really understand the discipline in those inputs, then it doesn't matter, again, if you have a Maserati, if you have a Honda, if you don't understand that you have to put gas in the vehicle, then it's not going to go anywhere. And so as you begin to talk about, being held accountable and us being, having that whole experience, I definitely believe that that's where we're headed, from not only just a supplier, the vendors and the technology, the call centers, the agents, all of that. It has to be this whole song and dance to make sure that, hey, we get a cohesive and that we're not kind of working in these silos to where it's like, well, I deliver the product, you got the product, and I don't know what to tell you. No, I got to know how to work the product and why I'm configuring it a particular, way. Yeah. So I 100% agree. 100% agree with that.
And we're kind of getting to that point when we're moving to the cloud, right? So we move to the cloud and we don't just wash our hands and go, hey, it's up to you. We now continue to provide that service to that call center so they can provide that service to the customer experience. So we're taking one step towards that. And in addition to that, it's interesting, 180, you talked about the why, and I love that, the why. Simon Sinek, right? He's all about the why. And if you think about, your children, my children, right? When we ask them, tell them, demand them, right, to do something, they'll do it because, hey, mom said so, dad said so. Mm-hmm. But don't we find it so much more? It takes a little bit longer first couple times, right? But if we let them understand the why in it, and if they can comprehend that, then it's less of a just push the button, as you talked about, but actually understand, when I push that button, what actually happens. And I'm not talking about the bits and bytes, but what happens such that what impact does that have on my schedule, on my peer schedule, on the technology, on the customer? How does that impact them? Because if I understand that now, the why, I'm going to be a lot more engaged
Mm-hmm.
and a lot more accountable when I do push that button at the right time to make sure that that's the right thing to do at the right time.
That's so good, which leads me into my next question. It's crazy. That was a great segue into why diversity matters then in call centers, right? Because if I haven't had a similar experience, or whether it's, we're diverse on so many levels, whether it's experience, whether it's ethnic background, whether it's religion, whatever, we're diverse on so many different ways, and we share so many commonalities in the same hand. Why does diversity matter, and how do we get to an end result to where that diversity program or that diversity in contact centers matter in what we deliver to customers?
Yeah, yeah. Interesting thoughts on that. So, I think first of all, there is never an end, right? We will never arrive, and I think that's good. I think that's good that it's the journey of getting there versus a point in time. Now, obviously, we have to have milestones to say we made it to here, we made it to there. But it's the journey that I think is the important part of diversity. And Juanita, I love how you said that, and that is that we all see the world a little bit differently. Even my wife, right? She sees things quite a bit differently than I do. And sometimes that causes a little bit of friction, right? When we're doing new flooring and she says, I want, purple, and I say, let's go with blue, right? Whatever the case is, right? And so there's a little bit of friction. But at the same time, if we were all just yes men, right? And we know what that means, right? The boss says something, and yeah, sure, great idea, boss, great idea. Where does that lead us? I mean, that's just horrible. And so the diversity in thinking, right? The diversity of I grew up seeing the world this way, right, wrong, or indifferent, and you grew up seeing the world this way, right, wrong, or indifferent, and that gives us better ideas and better collaboration. It's so important. Leadership has really kind of changed through the years. Well, let me say this: leadership, I don't think has, but management has. 30 years ago, management was all about the iron fist, right? You jump, I say jump, and you say how high. And leadership has really changed that and turned it more into a collaborative, diverse type of environment, so that the boss may not have all the right answers, doesn't have a monopoly on all the right answers. And so that's why the boss has teams, and that's why the boss has a staff to collaborate with and to get feedback from, such that when 3 people say to go left and 6 people say to go right, it's not a democratic vote, right? It's looking at different perspectives, and then at that point taking the information that you have and making a decision. And that decision can be right or wrong, but as long as we make that decision and make it quickly, and what I think it's Gerber that talks about failing fast. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, think maybe it's Jim Camp. I can't remember. But to fail fast, and so that didn't work. Let's try another trial. So I think diversity brings those different perspectives to that management group, to that leadership group, to that call center, so that the most optimal solution at that time can be attained. We can arrive to that.
Man, that is so good. Can you hear me, Joel?
I can. It looked like I was getting a little slow there.
Yeah. I have some, the beauty of, working remotely, right? We have bandwidth issues from time to time, but it's all good. I think that's a really good piece that you're talking through, right? Is that point of diversity, right? That point of diversity, because like you said, you and your wife have some different thoughts sometimes, right? Hey, I want pink floors. Well, why don't we do gray? Well, it's like having those different perspectives is why I think it's so important that we have the diversity, right? Because without that diversity and just having yes men, then my customer suffers, because no one said, hey, well, let's think about how we do business for this group of people, whether it's elderly or whether it is African Americans or whether it's a certain religious group. How does my product or my service translate to that customer group? And do we have representation that will be able to speak directly and have the same experiences that those people, that group have, that we will be able to translate a good customer experience to? Right. And then train it to other people that may not be a part of that group. Right. But they can at least understand, like, hey, this is why this matters. Case in point, I'm thinking about, AEP season, at United Healthcare. And, my mom, she sells life insurance, health insurance, and every AEP season she's doing over 65. And so she's talking to a certain group, but because, she is nearing that age, she understands about, why they want an appointment at this very specific time, because they got to go and catch their bingo, or they want to go and they got to go to the doctor at a very, she's getting that. Right. And so having someone like her out in the field, as opposed to having somebody that is fresh out of college and never had to deal with scheduling an appointment themselves, period, may not be your best bet. Right. But then if we have someone like her in leadership that can now teach that, it is still a skill set that can be taught, so you don't have to necessarily always experience being 65 to be able to empathize with someone who is of that age bracket, And so I think that is where it's important that we have diverse, not only diversity, just diversity across the board. So diversity on the front lines, diversity in leadership, which is, again, one of our goals is to normalize women in tech, normalize diversity in the leadership as well. If you caught the show before last, I think it wasn't Orlando's show, but it was Ebony's show. And she was talking about how, based on, I think it was a Mercer report or some report, that talked about it would take 95 years at the rate that we're going as far as diversity for women to catch up as far as equal, equity in leadership roles. And I thought, again, my mind was blown. I don't know why I have that emoji yet, but my mind was blown on that. Like 95 years, really? Can we not speed this process along? What else has to happen for us can we get it down to 30 years? Maybe this will happen during my lifespan, but I think that that's so important that as we think about the new normal and we think about, you hit so many key points about this new normal and evolving, right? That's the big thing you talked about, is about evolving, and so that we can move forward. With the internet, we didn't go backwards. We continued to move forward. And I believe that that's what we will do. And you talked about the different stakeholders as far as the vendors, the technology, moving to the cloud, all of these different things. If we would have asked, clients or contact centers 6 months ago, 18 months ago, they were, no, we can't do that. Now it is a requirement, or you will be a blockbuster or seer, right. You'll be irrelevant, or not have the technology to evolve. And so you hit so many key points. And so, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. It's it's always good and fun talking to you. Do you have any final words of wisdom? That's what we have to do. We have to do a wisdom segment. Like, I feel like I get so much information when I talk to you guys. Like, I'm like, tell me the juice, Joel. Any final words of wisdom as we embark on this new normal and how we adapt?
I think, when people ask me about words of wisdom, the one thing that always comes to mind, there's a a phrase by Stephen Covey. He put a book out years ago, 20, 30 years ago, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And the one thing that's always stuck in my mind is this phrase. And the phrase goes like this: seek first to understand, then be understood. And so how does that relate to what we've talked about today? Well, I think that relates to diversity, right? So instead of trying to make sure that you understand me first of all, how about turning that around? Let me understand you. And then by doing so, I might have some more input that I can give that actually adds more value. Or when I'm an agent and talking to that customer and I think, oh gosh, it's another agent who wants a discount on their bill, right? Well, let me tell you how it works. You're not going to get a discount. So maybe turning around and saying, why would that discount be important for you? And understanding them and then being understood. So that's my words of wisdom for today.
Listen, and we got to, on that note, we got to drop the gems, Joel. That was so good. First, seek to understand, then be understood. That's so good. I think when we definitely understand each other, then that opens up what we call true communication, because we're able to send a signal, receive a signal, and we're not just sending signals. We're able to send and receive. And I think that is important as we continue to evolve and embark on this new normal. So thank you so much, Joel. Hang out with me for a little bit. I'm going to sing to the green room, close the show out, and thank everybody for joining us. One moment here.
All right. See you guys. See you, Juanita.
Hey, guys. So thank you so much for joining us. Was that not awesome? Joel dropped all the gems, okay? Evolving, not going backwards, seeking to understand, then be understood. So many gems were dropped on this show. And I'm super excited about our next guest that we have coming up, which is none other than Janifa Murphy of 5'9". She's the Chief Marketing Officer at 5'9". So we have that show coming up next week. And we'll be talking about some really, really good topics. So make sure that you are tuning in with us live next Tuesday at 12:30. We'll be here, same place, same time. Thank you so much for tuning in. Talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.